In precious metals, the most persistent misunderstanding is simple. People look at a single inventory number and assume it represents how much silver exists or how much silver is available. But exchange inventories were never designed to answer those questions. They were designed to support settlement, delivery, and clearing inside a specific rulebook, in specific warehouses, in specific bar forms, under specific title and warrant procedures. When headlines say silver stocks are up or silver stocks are down, the statement is usually about one narrow category of metal visible to one venue, not the full above-ground stock of silver, and not even necessarily the silver that can actually move in a stressed delivery month. This video maps what COMEX and LME-style warehouse data can tell you, what it cannot tell you, and why reported stocks and usable supply are not the same concept. The key point is not conspiracy and not prediction. The key point is taxonomy. Which inventory bucket is being counted, what rules apply to it, and what large categories of silver never appear in the public numbers at all. Start with the COMEX framework, because it is the most widely quoted. COMEX publishes daily warehouse reports that list silver held at approved depositories. Those reports split inventory into two main categories, eligible and registered. Eligible means the bars meet the exchange's specification for deliverable silver and are stored in an approved warehouse, but they are not attached to a warrant for delivery. Registered means the bars are on warrant and are in the exchange's system, ready to be used to satisfy delivery obligations. That distinction is not a nuance. It is the difference between this metal exists in an approved place and meets the spec, and this metal is currently designated in a deliverable status under exchange procedures. The common mistake is to treat eligible metal as if it is automatically available to settle contracts. Eligible metal is not the same thing as deliverable supply. Eligible metal belongs to someone. It may be held for an industrial user, for an ETF custodian process, for a bank, for a private owner, or for any participant using that warehouse for storage. It can be converted to registered if the owner chooses to put it on warrant and follow the process. But it does not have to be, and the public report does not tell you anything about the owner's willingness to reclassify it. In other words, the report tells you a location and a category, not intent. Registered metal is also not a perfect measure of available metal. The warrant status is a deliverability designation, but it does not guarantee that the bar will actually move to a particular buyer without price incentives, financing capacity, and operational readiness. Delivery is a process, not a number. There are notices, allocations, delivery months, financing, and the simple logistical reality that moving large bars requires scheduling. In calm markets, those frictions are small. In tight markets, those frictions become the story. The second misunderstanding is about what inventory reports actually measure. COMEX warehouse reports measure metal in approved depositories, not metal in the entire economy. They do not count silver held in private vault networks that are not approved depositories. They do not count silver held at refineries awaiting fabrication. They do not count silver embedded in industrial supply chains as working inventory. They do not count silver locked in semi-finished goods, electronics components, solar metallization pastes, brazing alloys, and the countless industrial interfaces where silver is present but not sitting as exchange deliverable bars. They do not count silver in the form of retail coins sitting in households. They do not count jewelry stocks distributed across the world. They do not count sovereign holdings unless those holdings happen to be stored as deliverable bars in approved warehouses and appear in the report categories. So when people say silver inventories are falling, what they often mean is that one subset of above-ground stocks inside one reporting perimeter is falling. That can still matter because exchanges exist to settle contracts. But it is not a census of global silver, and it is not even a census of available silver. It is a settlement support statistic. A third misunderstanding is that exchange reports do not reveal encumbrance. A bar can be physically present and still be pledged, financed, or otherwise committed in a way that constrains its movement. Warehouse data tells you the bar count in the building and its category status. It does not tell you whether the metal is collateral for a loan, part of a lease structure, pledged in repo-like arrangements, committed to an industrial offtake, or subject to contractual restrictions. In modern commodity finance, the same physical asset can sit beneath layers of financing and claims. The inventory report does not map that claim structure. This is why the phrase hidden stocks needs careful definition. In most cases, the hidden supply is not secret. It is simply outside the reporting boundary. It is silver held in forms and places that are not subject to exchange warehouse reporting. The difference is visibility, not existence. Now add the second layer. Even if you stayed entirely inside the COMEX perimeter, the inventory number does not tell you what you probably want to know during stress, which is how much silver can be mobilized quickly at the right time, in the right form, in the right location, at a price the buyer can accept, under financing conditions the seller can tolerate. That set of constraints is why reported inventories can look large while deliverable supply feels tight, or look small while settlement remains orderly. Form matters. The industrial economy uses silver in many forms: powders, pastes, wires, thin coatings, contacts, and specialized components. The exchange uses standardized bars. A market can be tight in one form and loose in another. A shortage of silver paste for PV metallization is not solved by a bar sitting in a warehouse. Unless conversion capacity exists, lead times allow, and economics support it. Inventory reports do not show the conversion bottleneck. They show bars. Location matters. A bar in one vault system is not instantly a bar in another. Even within a single country, moving metal requires logistics. Across countries, it requires compliance, shipping, and sometimes different documentation standards. For markets that rely on specific settlement venues, the critical question can become metal in the right place, rather than metal somewhere on Earth. Again, reports are local. The market is global. Timing matters. Commodity markets are calendar systems. Delivery months, prompt dates, and financing windows create a schedule. A bar that is technically deliverable is not necessarily deliverable on the exact day a participant needs it without incentives or arrangements. Inventory snapshots are static. Settlement is dynamic. With that framework, the next step is to interpret how reported stocks can move for reasons that are not about mine supply. The largest movements often reflect relocation and reclassification. Relocation means metal moving between vaulting networks or jurisdictions, often driven by pricing differences, hedging needs, or settlement incentives. Reclassification means eligible being converted to registered, or registered being removed from warrant, without the bar necessarily leaving the warehouse. Both can produce headline changes in the reported categories without changing global above-ground stocks. This is why two people can look at the same COMEX report and tell two different stories. One person sees eligible rising and thinks plenty of silver. Another person sees registered falling and thinks deliverable is vanishing. Both statements can be numerically true, and neither statement alone answers the practical question of what will happen during the next delivery cycle. The missing variable is behavioral. Will owners make metal available, and under what incentive structure? Now bring in the LME part of the conversation carefully, because different exchanges publish different kinds of stock data. For base metals, the LME's published warehouse stocks typically represent metal in LME-approved warehouses on warrant, with categories like live warrants and canceled warrants that indicate whether metal is earmarked for loadout. These datasets are often used as proxies for available inventory, but they have the same fundamental limitation. They represent metal inside one approved warehouse system under a specific warrant structure, not the total metal held in private storage, producer stocks, consumer stocks, or off-warrant inventory. Even within LME-style systems, canceled warrants are a good example of why the reported number is not the whole story. A canceled warrant can indicate metal has been earmarked for withdrawal, which means the headline stock may still show it until it physically leaves the warehouse, while the functional availability is already reduced. Inventory data is not just a quantity, it is a status map. Status changes can matter as much as tonnage. The deeper point is that warehouse reporting is a map of one part of the distribution system. Industrial reality is larger and more fragmented. Silver exists across a chain. Mines produce concentrate, refiners produce high-purity metal, fabricators convert into products, manufacturers embed it into goods, and scrap returns some portion back through recycling. Exchange bars sit inside this chain as one node, a standardized form used for financial settlement and some forms of investment storage. The exchange node can tighten even when other nodes are stable, because each node has its own bottlenecks and constraints. At this point, it becomes possible to answer the central question. What does COMEX and exchange-style warehouse data not reveal? It does not reveal how much silver is held by industrial users as operating inventory. It does not reveal how much silver is committed under long-term industrial supply contracts. It does not reveal how much is in ETF custody networks unless those networks overlap with the exchange's approved depositories and are reported in a way that makes the overlap obvious. It does not reveal how much silver is in private vaulting systems used by institutions. It does not reveal how much silver is in transit, in fabrication, or in semi-finished goods. It does not reveal the claim structure, whether bars are pledged, leased, financed, or otherwise constrained. And it does not reveal intent, whether eligible owners will reclassify to registered, or whether on-warrant holders will stand for delivery or remove warrants. If you want to understand the silver market using only public information, the practical approach is to treat reported exchange stocks as one layer of a larger inventory stack. On the visible layer, you have exchange warehouse reports with category splits and daily changes. On the semi-visible layer, you have public reporting from major silver investment products and some large custodial systems that publish holdings. On the largely invisible layer, you have industrial working inventories and private storage, which typically appear only indirectly through trade flows, manufacturing output, and the balance of supply and demand reported annually by industry surveys. Those annual surveys are important because they remind you that deficits and surpluses are accounting outcomes that must be balanced somewhere. If the market runs a structural deficit, that deficit is typically balanced by drawing down above-ground stocks or increasing recycling flows, or both. But the drawdown may occur in places you cannot see directly: manufacturer inventories, private vault allocations, or non-exchange storage. If you focus only on exchange-visible inventories, you can miss the broader balancing mechanism. This is why it is possible for a market to run deficits for multiple years while exchange stocks do not collapse in a straight line, or for exchange stocks to move sharply while the annual supply picture has not changed. The exchange is a settlement venue that responds to incentives. The annual supply-demand balance is a system outcome that reflects industrial consumption, investment demand, recycling, and mine production. They are connected, but they are not the same lens. Another key limitation is that reported inventories do not tell you how easy it is to source. Ease of sourcing is often determined by fabrication premiums, lead times, and availability of specific products, rather than by bar inventories. A manufacturer that needs silver paste for PEV metallization cares about paste supply chains, not warehouse bars. A utility that needs switchgear contacts cares about component supply and lead times. A data center developer cares about transformers, switchgear, bus bars, and power distribution components. The silver that matters here is embedded inside industrial product chains. Exchange stock statistics do not measure those bottlenecks. If the purpose is to understand what is happening in real time, warehouse reports are still useful, but only when you interpret them as a settlement map. A large drawdown can indicate relocation to satisfy delivery or to exploit price spreads. A large build can indicate the reverse. A shift from registered to eligible can signal changes in deliverability status. A rise in canceled warrants in LME style reporting can signal pending loadout. But none of these, on their own, proves a global shortage or global abundance. They prove that one node in the network is changing its balance and status. The clean conclusion is mechanical. Reported stocks are not total stocks. Eligible is not available. On warrant is not unencumbered. Inventory is not flow. The exchange publishes what it needs to publish to run a standardized delivery and clearing system. The global economy runs on a much wider and less transparent inventory system that includes industrial working inventories, private custody, and intermediate products. If you want to understand silver through public data, you have to keep those layers separate and avoid collapsing them into one number. That separation is where the story becomes clear, without requiring assumptions, speculation, or fear.